When both twins experience soul recognition, both are likely in matrix conditioning. And keep in mind, this can all vary for you and your twin. This is just how I see my own dynamic. But I think there are a lot of basic structural occurrences that are true for people experiencing awakening as a shared soul. The spiritual twin, who I call the FI or feminine intern, is very open and fluid at soul recognition. But when activation sets in, the FI usually denies the feelings briefly. Their reaction depends on their conditioning, their ego. The obsessive feelings they experience usually causes them to open to the love they feel for this person they normally wouldn't tolerate or be open to. But it's typically easier for the feminine than it is for the masculine to get out of that conditioning, which can be related to the feeling of being trapped in an external and controlling structure, or that mentality, which is a common definition of the matrix that I'm referring to. And the reason why it's easier is because the feminine is the spiritual twin. And they're the spiritual twin because they're being led to bring balance to the masculine and feminine constructs, where the scale has been tipped more towards the masculine energy and has caused imbalance. And this is mirrored in our spiritual and physical design as human beings. We've lost touch with our spiritual capabilities within this physical existence. We've lost that relationship with our spiritual essence. There's been suppression for the spiritual and the feminine. And with that same idea, it's harder for the masculine to remove themselves from the matrix because of that same conditioning. They're deeper in the matrix because of the imbalances that have weighed towards what has deceptively seemed like it was in favor of the masculine and the physical constructs of our world. They have greater attachments to the concepts rooted in the matrix, such as social standing, achievements, identifying with a material value that they obtain because it's been weighing in heavier for them on the social scale, so to speak. For the most part, it's how they've been conditioned to believe it's what masculinity is supposed to be, what they're supposed to do, how to act, and so on. It's controlling and it feeds the ego, which they've been taught to follow, rather than being open to their intuition. For the spiritual twin, moving onto their spiritual path is one of the first pivotal moments of surrender the FI experiences. And for them, this is a very internal experience, whereas for the masculine, it's mostly external. The MI will experience pivotal moments as well, but they may not stand out to them as life changing. Not at first, because they're usually in denial until they begin to awaken. At first, it's likely their way of thinking changes, gradually changing the way they view addictions, relationships, money, and such, all aspects of their life, and they're helping to set the standard for the collective masculinity. Depending on how deeply conditioned they are, the wounds and traumas play into this as well. But as their thinking changes, they begin responding to conditioning differently. Their heart and their beliefs change as they gradually become more grounded. And they may have already been grounded, but it's the shared energy of the FI's spiritual growth that mirrors in their changes. So the spiritual twin experiences mostly spiritual growth, and the physical twin, they become more grounded. And that's them getting to a place of balance found with their connection to the world around them. And when I say balance, that's the masculine's design, their physical design, which is part of the shared soul frequency, because we have a spiritual twin and what I call the physical twin. But it's that they're the one whose growth is more 3D related. It's more grounded. More of their balance is with their 3D environment. It's that external growth. But they're not being controlled by it, but living in it while they're in their divine energy, which tends to show up as divine masculine energy. At soul recognition, our divine energy rushed through us into all of our balances and imbalances, including traumas, wounds, all that deep stuff was ignited. For the MI, because they're deeper in the matrix conditioning, they feel their value, their worth through the material wealth and societal validation. This is how they define themselves. Immediately, the divine energy, aka spiritual love, unconditional love, it overwhelms them because they've actually had their heart closed off just as much as the feminine has, if not more, but in different ways. They tend to have more relationships or lengthier relationships, but they've been without true depth. They lack in authenticity. So at soul recognition, the MI is in that shared divine energy. This is the initial opening of the heart. They feel the incredible spiritual love at soul recognition too, because they feel their authenticity in this and they want more of this. But conditioning and circumstances create obstacles for them. But it's actually the activation that's taking place. The divine energy shifts through the balances and imbalances of both, emphasizing everything for us to take notice of. This is all to turn us onto our spiritual journey. The energy, that divine energy, is activating us. And it's the contrast of the intense spiritual love, the divine energy, and the imbalances that we've harbored for so long that causes the chaos within, which is when running and chasing happens. After the feminine moves on to their spiritual path, the masculine is usually still unawakened to their journey. And though they're aware of the intense bond they share with their counterpart, they usually deny this at first. This is when the masculine goes deeper into the matrix. They're running hard, and the heavier their imbalances are, the more contrasting the divine energy is with those imbalances, which makes them run even harder. And this is in relation to the chakras being out of balance with their intended vibrations. So if they were somebody who was hardly ever open to their internal guidance, really seeking outward approval through society versus following their truth, if they're too much into physical gratifications, money, status, power, addictions, and all that, then the deeper they dive into the matrix and the more earth-shattering it is for them when they hit the bottom. They're experiencing the obsessive thinking as well. And so as all this plays out, the feminine is always there, and it can be consciously and subconsciously, but on different levels. But because the masculine has many direct physical distractions, it seems they're not aware of the shared energy, and they may not ever see it as that, even after awakening, because they're the more physically linked twin, though they can see it and know about it, be aware of it. But again, this can happen on different levels for everyone. But it's the spiritual twin who is aware of this. And part of that is because awareness is more to the spiritual growth. It's the spiritual aspect. So with the masculine, the heavier their imbalances are, the more intense this is for them. This is the time when they're going through activation and probably ego check, and is when they might be going from one failing relationship to another, or even seeking out multiple sex partners, because since they met their twin, which is when they experience that spiritual love, divine energy, and soul recognition, they can't find satisfaction. Like, okay, yeah, they can still find physical satisfaction, but it's no longer enough. They need that spiritual high now, which they're not used to feeling, so they're searching for it. And the FI may try to do this too, like try to find this in other partners or other types of gratification, but nothing else can bring that same fulfillment. For the masculine, most of their gratification has been outward. So they get frustrated because they don't understand why they need to feel something now. So they keep searching, maybe moving on to one after another, or they may try to numb or find satisfaction through addictions. It's here they begin to realize nothing compares to what they felt during soul recognition. And it's here where their lack of self-worth really takes a toll on them. And they struggle with facing traumas like they want their counterpart, but they feel triggered. They don't feel worthy because when they were with them, they were in their divine energy. Their feminine was in their divine energy. So they saw that potential. Same for the feminine. They saw the potential in their masculine as their soul's design. And without realizing it at the time, they saw their own potential too. They saw their soul in each other's eyes. And as the masculine is going through activation, they may or may not be open to the guidance of their inner voice. But if they are, they may or may not realize that they're listening to their intuition exactly or reacting to subconscious cues. And the more imbalanced they are, the less likely they are to be open to their higher self. But the divine energy has their attention because the heavier their imbalances are, the more intense their activation is. And it's extreme because the divine energy transferred and transmuted to the balances and imbalances, which makes them really stand out. It's how running and chasing occur, which helps turn them onto their spiritual journey. So as the feminine goes through the spiritual growth, so does the masculine, but it's not as much as what the feminine goes through. Both go through spiritual and 3D related growth, but the feminine's is more spiritual and the masculine's is more physical. The feminine or spiritual twin feels the intensity of activation as well. And if they follow their guidance, they move onto their spiritual path, which will reflect on the masculine. If they don't, if they stay stuck in activation, this reflects on the masculine as well, and they stay in that matrix conditioning. And they continue reacting to triggers that were formed through their traumas. So while the masculine's first spiritual cycle will likely be very subtle because it mostly occurs subconsciously, it's changing their way of thinking, but their first physical growth cycle kind of rocks their world. It takes place outwardly, experiencing a lot of external changes. They probably see a lot of changes with the physical aspects or 3D related things, such as their job, their relationships, health, and home. But it's all getting torn down so it can be rebuilt. And this is when I believe most will go through what I call the ego check, aka denots or ego death. But I believe the intensity and depth of the spiritual growth that the feminine experiences at first mirrors in a couple of ways in the masculine's experience. One being the intensity and depth of the ego check. So the MI is going through this ego check, and it mirrors the intensity and depth of the spiritual growth that the feminine goes through in the early stages of their journey. And I draw this out so it's easier to understand, so you can visualize it in my growth cycles and detaching video. But it also mirrors in the later stages of the physical growth that the masculine goes through. Meanwhile, the feminine is being led through healing. As a spiritual twin, the FI will carry most of the healing energy that's shared between them. So as the MI is struggling with those traumas or other imbalances, they're sharing and healing with the feminine. But it may not appear that way outwardly depending on their imbalances, which may cause them to fight all of this even harder. Like how I mentioned struggling with finances, their job, their relationships, it gets very chaotic. Or they may even completely give in to being controlled in their relationships, trying to numb or deny feeling anything at all. It may seem like they don't care about showing up in life. The more off balance they are, the longer this may take for them. This is why it's important for the feminine to learn the spiritual aspects of their journey, including the shared energy, opening to their guidance, allowing themselves to work through healing because that's being shared with their twin in what may be one of the hardest times of their life. For both, their thinking slowly begins to change. The FI is learning about trusting in their higher self and what balance is. Though it may take some time to show outwardly, the MI begins showing up for others first. For the FI, they recognize the inward guidance, so they become aware of the self-love aspects, and they tend to start showing up for themselves more directly in the earlier stages of their journey. The MI will begin to find their balance in the lower 3 chakras, the more grounded or physical chakras, which are the outward aspects of our experiences and expressions. They're the outlets, they're giving. So placing an importance on security, stability, groundedness, connection to their environment begins to happen. They usually get in a job where they feel accomplished, and they may become more involved with the home, doing things to provide and secure it. They show up in their relationships with family, friends, loved ones. As their vibration remains consistently higher, people and things that don't match that vibration tend to disappear. And it may seem like the FI is not on their mind as they go through all this, but they are actually their biggest motivation. And this can be largely subconscious at first, experiencing dreams, signs and synchronicities, and even astral experiences. I believe there is a conscious motivation here as well. They begin sharing more of their creative side with others, being present with experiences, allowing themselves to truly feel and appreciate sensually. They begin to gain confidence in their true identity. But this is only the beginning, as they are slowly getting back to themselves, their true selves, as they were meant to be. That's their unique balance with their soul from their physical existence. Their physical is part of the soul design, and the feminine's physical is part of the soul design. Both bodies were designed for the soul's experience. The MI, of course, can find this balance within and wholly through themselves, but their authenticity is through their heart, which is through their feminine, because they share their soul. And because they felt that unconditional love with them, even though they may not have recognized it as that. And they felt their greatest feeling of self-worth. But as they go through their journey, they also learn about unconditional love for others. And we have free will. But as we align, our free will aligns with our divine plan. So this is also true for the feminine, finding their most grounded path through their masculine. And this is bringing them into their heart. Through self-love, they're each other's reflection in the heart as one.